G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here, and this movie has absolutely nothing to do with magnetic flywheels. But I just couldn't resist. Showing a spring-damped repulsor oscillating magnet for those who wanted to see the Mark 5B version. Now, this particular movie is, of course, a malt liquor video, and that means a pair of 1.8 standard drink Coopers have already gone down my throat. And this one is number 3. So, ting 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 ting, as they say. So, what are we going to have this little malt liquor video about? I thought transgenderism and comeback-ology. Yeah? What a good topic for a malt liquor video. Malt liquor. Right. Now, transgenderism. Well, one of my subs, Sister Sunshine TV, has a movie about transgenderism, and it seems that this bloke on the right here decided, when he had a wife and a couple of kids and a job with ABC Broadcasting as a news producer, he decided he wasn't really a bloke, he was really a woman. So he leaves his wife, upsets his kids, gets himself all new ID and a whole new lifestyle, and he lives as a woman. And then after 3 months, he makes a 911 emergency call and he says, "Oh, what am I doing? Here I am, I got no memory of anything." And then he reckons that it wasn't his fault, it was his wife dressed him up as a woman. And then after that he reckons that he's come to his senses and it wasn't his wife, and he remembers it all, but he now wants to blame it on his mummy because she gave him some kind of female hormones to prolong an acting career. And now he wants to go back to being a bloke. So, Sister Sunshine TV takes the line that an awful lot of these transgender cases are a figment of a deranged imaginitis, and that people who feel themselves in such a position should rethink the issue, and if they've got partners and children, then they should forego their selfish daydreams and buckle down and discharge their duty to the other people that they have made commitments to. And I can see her point of view. But being as I trained as a general nurse and I worked in a big city hospital, and in the big city hospital there were, I think there were 600 people on the nursing staff, and half those people were homosexual and half were male. So there was a lot of lesbians and a lot of homosexuals and a lot of bisexuals, and there was in fact one nurse's aide who was halfway through a sex change operation, and this particular nurse's aide was going from male to female and couldn't get the hospital administration to allow the wearing of a dress because when applying for the job, the box on the application form ticked was male. So this particular student, or male nurse's aide, decided to run a guerrilla campaign. An outside nursing administration block there was a set of tennis courts which the staff were permitted to use, and in summer in Sydney it gets pretty hot, and the male staff were in the habit of playing wearing shorts, bare-chested. So the nurse's aide, who was halfway through a sex change operation and was under estrogen therapy and developing breasts, decided, okay, fine, you won't let me wear a dress to work, so therefore he started playing tennis in his lunch hour, topless, braless. And the people in the administration office who wouldn't let him wear a dress because they reckoned that he ticked the box saying he was male, looked out the window and saw him running around with his budding little breast buds, bouncing around on the tennis court, and they decided, well, gee, maybe we can let him wear a dress. What they did was they fired him on the promise that if he went to another Veterans Affairs hospital which was operated by the same government department and sought employment and ticked the box female and then resigned and then came back with a history of having worked as a female, then he would be able to wear a dress to work, and that's what happened. Okay, so I've been watching such phenomena since the 1980s. Boys who think they're girls, and occasionally girls who think they're boys. Alright, interesting. Now, a lot of these people who are transgendered, they say that God made a mistake and they hate God and that's why they are atheists. Which is a bit of a non sequitur to me. The God they don't believe in made a mistake, therefore they hate God, thus and because they are atheists who don't believe in God. And this is all brought about because they've got a vagina and they want a penis, or they've got a penis and they want a vagina, and they reckon that ever since they were little and tiny they have identified as being stuck in the wrong sex body. Yeah? Right. Well, in order to swallow that we need to swallow some malt liquor. Richard Bach says, in a book of his called Illusions, which contains excerpts from the Messiah's Handbook, Reminders for the Advanced Soul, he says, imagine the universe beautiful and just and perfect. Then remember, the is has imagined it a great deal better than you. So, the universe already is beautiful and just and perfect. And it also says in the Messiah's Handbook, Reminders for the Advanced Soul, it says, the mark of your ignorance lies in the depth of your belief in injustice and tragedy. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly. Okay, so I spent 10 years as an atheist. What woke me up to the fact that atheism is essentially a crock of shit is that atheists vow, swear, declare and claim that in order to have consciousness you must have neurology, and in order to have neurology you must have anatomy and physiology, and it's all got to be functioning. So the atheists look on something like a near-death experience and they say, oh, alack and alas, it is but a phantasm, an image created by the hypoxic dying brain. And they consign all observations by everybody who's ever had a near-death experience to the junk bin. Well, problem with that is that there's a fella wrote a book recently, got it published, I think it was called The Lazarus Principle, and this fella works as a neurophysiologist in intensive care wards, and what he does is he gets patients who are already hooked up to every monitoring device known to medicine, and when they have a cardiac arrest, he observes their brain activity while they're being resuscitated. And what he says is that within 20 seconds of your heart stopping, there is no brain activity. You haven't got enough of a perfusion rate for there to be any cellular activity in your brain, therefore there is no brain activity. And the atheists who say that near-death experiences are an artefact of an hypoxic brain have plucked that idea out of their asshole. There is no evidence to support the atheist hypothesis. All the evidence is that people who've been dead for as long as 3 hours have come back and suddenly their brain has sparked up and fired again, and they have the conscious memories of what happened while they were dead. Okay, well, I had a pre-déjà vu kind of near-death experience. I was about to push the trigger while sucking on a gun, and I flashed out of my body, moved forward in time, had a look at what it was going to be like, decided I didn't want to do that, and went back into my body. That was enough to demonstrate to me that humans have souls and atheism is bullshit. Okay, well, if humans have souls, when do they get their souls? I was once in a position where my 6- and 7-year-old kids heard a radio announce that somebody put a bomb at an abortion clinic. And the kids had heard mummy and daddy shouting the word abortion years earlier in their lives, and they pricked their little ears and said, "Daddy, Daddy, what's an abortion clinic?" And I said, well, you know, like it's this kind of a doctor's clinic where pregnant women go and the doctor does an operation so that they are not pregnant. And the kid said, oh, so the baby dies. Because, you know, the first time my kids asked where babies come from, they got sperms and eggs explained to them when they were 3, so they understood that when a sperm goes into an egg, a whole new individual is conceived, and if there's nothing wrong with the process, if there's no genetic damage and there's no hypoxic moments and no high temperatures and no chemical interventions, nothing goes wrong, then that new individual that was conceived when the sperm went into the egg, it will continue to grow and develop until it gets born, and then it is a new human individual. They'd known that since they were 3, you see. So when I'm trying to explain, you know, that a doctor does an operation and a pregnant woman is no longer pregnant, they leap to the conclusion that the baby dies. Now, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "From out of the mouths of babes and innocents, there shall come the wisdom of the ages." And you can't explain abortion to a kid who knows about sperms and eggs without them deciding the baby dies. Sorry about that, feminists. Sorry about that, people who go in for sophisticated, elaborate circumlocutions. The baby dies. Okay, so on the day I tried to explain to the kids that there are 3 opinions. There's one opinion that says a baby is a new individual when it starts to breathe air, and that's when it gets a tax file number, a Medicare number, it can own property and pay taxes. It can get a passport too. There's another opinion that says a baby is an individual when a woman is visibly pregnant, and that's why a lot of countries in the world say it's okay for a woman who's less than 3 months pregnant to go and get an operation so she's no longer pregnant, because unless somebody knows she's pregnant, then the baby's not a baby. And then there are other people who say that a baby is an individual when the sperm goes into the egg. And that's the point of view the kids took. Right? From out of the mouths of babes and innocents there shall come the wisdom of the ages. As long as you haven't corrupted them first. Okay, so let's just say that my kids and Jesus, and I'm not a Christian, but let's just say they were right. So the whole new individual starts, and a whole new soul is conceived when the sperm goes into the egg. Well, all manner of things can cause that new human to never be born. Right? Some kind of a genetic abnormality, something might happen to the mother, chemicals, anything. You know, it's not just a doctor with a vacuum cleaner or a scared little girl with a coat hanger. The baby might be born dead. The baby might die early in life. It may never have a chance to make any decisions in its life. So how is a God theory going to deal with the situation of an immortal soul that's never had a chance to live any material life? That God theory would have to have some kind of arrangement for schools and education for the fetal spirits. Yes? Well, that's what my God theory has. It says there are schools in the S, or the spirit world, for fetal spirits who didn't get to live long enough in the material universe to make any decisions or learn about life. If there's 5 conceptions for every live birth, well, maybe every person who's alive has 4 fetal spirits attached to them, watching how their life progresses. Yeah, it's a possibility. It kind of makes sense. It's what my book of God Theory suggests, and I therefore kind of accept it. But there are people who believe in comeback-ology. And the comeback-ologists like to think that they are going to get to show up again on Earth after they've died. Some of them think they have to sit on a sunbeam for 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years to think about the meaning of life, and then they come back and get reborn. But some of them, the really keen little Ouija board operators, they figure they don't need to do that. They reckon as soon as they die, they're just going to float up out of their body, and they're not going to get judged on what they've done in their life because they reckon they're good people. They're just going to go straight off to the nearest labour ward, and they're going to be reborn. So, The way I understand it, that's what they do. Right? They say to their guardian angel, their recording angel, "Whoop, excuse me, I don't need to have this conversation, I'm off to be reborn." They go to the nearest labour ward and they get in a holding pattern with all the other wannabe comeback-ologists, because they discover every baby in every vagina has already got a soul in its brain. And it's not until there's a baby that is either about to be born dead, with really lousy APGARs, 1 and 2, and it's being resuscitated, and that baby's about to die, this is when the frustrated comeback-ologist in the holding pattern at the labour ward spirals down and dives into the baby's skull and grabs a hold of the manual control for the respirations and the heartbeat and cranks it all up and come on, we can be reborn, we can be reborn. Succeeds in getting the kid resuscitated and then finds there's no room in a neonatal skull for an adult mind. So it's not until they're 3 or 4 years old that some of them get to look down at their genitals and say, "What's this? I wanted a cock and I've got a cunt," or "I wanted a cunt and I've got a cock." That's what I think your transgendered individuals are. They are determined comeback-ologists who have trapped themselves in a body the opposite sex to that of their own soul from the first time when it was conceived. Now, if you're a transgendered person and you find that offensive, well, I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm trying to be exploratory and speculative, and this is a movie about comparative theology. I'm trying to figure out how a competent, benevolent, omnipotent, omnipresent, omnisentient God theory could allow for such a situation that there are people walking and talking alive today who honestly believe that they're a cock in a frock and that it's God's mistake. And I'm saying it's not God's mistake. I'm saying the system allows for people who want to believe in comeback-ology to force their way to take control of somebody else who is going to be dead. And they can have a life, and some of them, like if a woman dives into a female fetus or a man dives into a male fetus, they may just be obsessed with death. If they're stuck in the wrong sex body, they'll be obsessed with death and pissed off they've got the wrong genitals, and they'll be really miserable and depressed, upset with life in general. I know of one transsexual who's also an antinatalist and an ethicist who's told me in PMs how every breath they smell death. They feel like they should be dead. They crave death. They want to be dead. I'm not telling them to suicide, but I can offer no solution to the dilemma that they are in. If there's no God, if it's purely down to genetics, well, tough shit, they're stuck in a wrong body and no amount of surgery is going to fix it. And if the creator of the universe has allowed them to trap themselves as a fetal spirit controlling somebody else's body, who am I to tell them to change? Like they've got this far with their game, it's up to them to figure out what to do with it now. But yeah, that's my take on transgenderism and comeback-ology. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Smooth malt liquor.